a land rights drama espousing radical anti-caste politics, a big-ticket star backed by an ensemble cast, and a hefty budget. When the Dunya Vijay starrer Landlord released on January 23rd, it seemed to have everything going for it. However, the film was met with mixed reactions. In attempting to make a social justice film on land struggle and rural oppression, Landlord leaned into familiar tropes and melodrama, failing to match its intention with originality, many said. Kannada cinema has often spoken about class divide and social reform. But when it comes to caste, the lens turns cautious. However, the industry is no stranger to anti-caste narratives. From Samskara to Kaatera, from Janamada Jodi to Hebbuli Cut, Kannada filmmakers have always attempted to critique Brahminical dominance, caste hierarchies and orthodoxy while centering the voices and experiences of the Dalits and marginalized groups. The outcome, however, has been debatable. The slow start to Landlord has yet again raised the question: why does Kannada cinema fall short while trying to tell anti-caste stories? More importantly, why has the industry been shy to make films that take caste hierarchies head-on in recent times? Hello and welcome to Decode Karnataka. I'm Nalme Nachiyar, and joining me for the discussion this week is my colleague and cinema correspondent Vivek MV. So let me begin by asking you, what did you think of the movie Landlord? I've read your review, but for our viewers, just get into what you thought about the movie.
Yeah, I think the perception outside is that the movie has had a slow start, and the problem there is every movie has some expectations, and with Vijay, his previous two films, Bhima and Salaga, they were targeted towards youngsters.
Right.
So obviously the opening was big. So what happened with Landlord was when it came on Friday, suddenly there was a surprise as to why it did not pick up quickly.
Over the weekend.
Yeah, as far as tickets were concerned and footfalls and all that. So because the problem is this movie wasn't positioned properly. Because Vijay was very clear that he was targeting youngsters with Bhima and Salaga.
Right.
Here, it wasn't your usual, how do you say, like you go and have some fun with great songs, fights, and some social messaging added to it. So this was like a very rooted drama with a lot of serious moments, and it involved a lot of, how do you say, history in it. So
was it also promoted that way?
No, that's the thing. So they didn't position it that way.
Okay.
Even if they tried to, it didn't come out like that. Like,
Okay.
People didn't know what to completely expect out of it.
Right.
Another problem was that this was a multi-starrer. So there was a lot of buzz about the face-off between Rajbi Shetty, Dunya Vijay and all that.
Yeah.
So that's how things stood in the first few days of, obviously, Landlord. So post that, what happened was that that's when they began saying that, what to expect from the movie. Like, that's when they started mentioning about constitution. That's when they started talking about equality.
Right.
So then people started understanding what the movie is trying to say. And then it did have a great run. I can't say great run, but the release timing was good because, they released on a Friday and Monday was Republic Day.
Right.
So they were clear that they get 4 days together.
Yeah.
So I think from Saturday, the movie picked up. Saturday evening of sorts, and they had a decent run on Sunday and Monday. So that's how it stood as far as the pre-release buzz was concerned.
Right.
As far as Landlord, for me, how it was, I felt it tried to pack in a lot of things. Like, it just didn't talk about, there's an oppressor and there's an oppressed group trying to, own a land. It was not just that. The world building was good. It spoke about different customs and how rigid some types of structures are. But again, I think what I felt and what I know from the fact that I'm seeing on social media is that people are finding the messaging to be a bit overt.
Okay.
They're saying it's a bit loud towards the end of it. That is the climax. And also the melodrama is not working with people.
Yeah, no, I noticed that too. But, it sort of is in line with how he is trying to rebrand himself, his last couple of films.
Yeah.
I watched the film and I get what you're talking about. The last, after the fight sequence in the end, there is there's a monologue and there is really, emphatic evocation of the constitution and what it means and education and how important all that is. But I like you said, I think the writing could have been more rousing.
Yeah.
I think it fails to do that. But in that, it is still a very clear anti-caste film, like like a
It
film
is,
with an
it is.
anti-caste
Yeah,
message,
yeah.
right? But let me get you to the next question, which is that when we mention anti-caste cinema, the Kannada film industry and the work that it's put out is not often spoken about on a pan-India or a global scale. You will hear films from mostly Tamil industry, but maybe some from Malayalam, some Telugu. Um, we have mentions, but of older films, right? Even our the filmmakers, our directors, there are no names that continue
Yeah.
to stand by these themes and make movies on them. So do you think that we do not have enough films? Is this because we don't have enough films that we've not continued to make them in a sustained manner? And if yes or no, why?
So we've had really good films, but in phases. So when you mention Tamil film industry, they kind of how do you say charted a movement of sorts for the last 10 years. So that's a huge time, right, to consistently do it. And if you take Tamil, what Paranjit did was he not only made films, but he also started his production house, which also spoke for the same cause. The
And
Neelam,
supported artists.
exactly. So the Neelam, I think it's called Neelam Productions. They kind of like Mari Selvaraj came from that production house. His first film was backed by Ranjit.
Right.
So then you have a movement where all of them working together know that this is what they're doing. So here they don't, there's no movement as such, first of all. But I would say there was a phase in the 70s where strong anti-caste films came out. But that was because of the influence of the literary movement we had. So prior to the Gokak, we had the proper literary movement like the Navya and the
the Bandaya Sahitya
Correct.
movement, yeah.
So what happens there is there was a golden period where people like B.V. Karant, Girish Karnad, Girish Kasarvalli, they started making movies out of literary works. Like Samskara was from U.R. Anantmurthy's book. So Gatashraddha was also from U.R. Anantmurthy's book. So what happened there was these films spoke about the rigid caste structure. They criticized this hypocrisy of the orthodox Hindu society. So, but then if you look at it now, it's been almost 50 years. There's a big gap between the literature and cinema. So that was the reason. Whereas back then, the movement was so strong that people were more open in accepting such works. I forgot to mention Chomanadudi, which was from Shivram Karant's book. So these were like, the parallel movement. This is the first parallel movement witnessed by the Kannada film industry. And it was complete, it spoke about caste. It condemned the rigid structure. But like I said, there's been a gap. And that's because of how Kannada cinema has moved away from adapting literary classics.
Yeah. True. Not a lot of books that have been adapted. We've seen more remakes, in fact, from other languages compared to like adaptations from our own literature. But while on that point, do you think that these films back then, for that age, they were like breakout? They were bold critiques of the the caste system, but did they actually do as well? Like, I don't know if we can, equate it to today's commercial viability, but how were they received back then?
So they were very clear about being very parallel in their approach. It was completely not in the popular cinema section. But again, because they were such powerful works, they got national and international recognition. But sometimes that also put them in trouble because Samskara was apparently the first Kannada film to be banned by the Madras Censor Board. You cannot talk entirely about commercial viability because that was not what they went for. They wanted to make a statement, and all the filmmakers like Kasarvalli kind of, arrived himself with Gatashraddha, and he had to say that this is going to be my style. Same with Karnad. So what I'm trying to say is they were very clear that they're going to start a movement which is inspired by literary works, and this will be the parallel movement in the Kannada film industry. But of course, they were not devoid of troubles. Like I said, Samskara was banned. But I feel they've had a great impact on a lot of young parallel filmmakers today. For example, Natesh Hegde is the best example. And even if you have somebody like Bhimrao who made Hebuli Cut. So obviously they've had an impact. But the sad part is how the movement didn't last long.
Yeah, that's one thing, I was thinking when that we have had caste struggles or anti-caste movement as such come up as plot points, or like say like you have in relationships, romance, friendships, right? Or you have workplace struggles, or like how they're discriminated in villages or communities. But they're all minor plot points, but they're never, at least if for the most part in mainstream, never really the central theme of the movie leading towards a very strong stance, right? So
yeah, I'll give you an example how they have not been like the central core of the plot. So, Gatashraddha is about how a widow's life gets affected by the caste system, and Samskara talks about the priesthood and like I said, the hypocrisy of the Orthodox society. In comparison, if you take something like Ondu Muttina Kate, where Shankarnag worked with Rajkumar, that also talk about tribal communities and the power structure, how people with a lot of power oppress tribal communities, but it also speaks about greed. So it is not entirely stressing on the discrimination factor alone. It also talks about greed. What happens when you get something like so much money that you don't know how to handle it, and there's a lot of greed in society. So Shankarnag is completely not going towards that. Same thing I think with Puttana Kanagal's Paduvaralli Pandavaru, where 5 youngsters kind of go against a feudal landlord. Those are all made commercially to entertain as well. Whereas these films were, how do you say, they were strong social commentary. So that's how you differentiate. But I would still say what Puttana Kanagal and Shankarnag did were good, because Ambrish in Paduvaralli Pandavaru and Rajkumar in Ondu Muttina Kate were popular stars. They are superstars. But these movies kind of break their image. And Shankarnag consciously wanted to break the image of Dr. Rajkumar. And it helps. When a star works in such kind of films, the reach is bigger. So that is one thing that we have noticed, and that is something missing again now. Like you mentioned, if you come back to the present, stars working in such kind of movies are kind of few and far.
Okay. One major grouse that we hear time and again when we are talking about cinema made on the anti-caste struggle is that they find it very hard to balance form with the content. In most cases, either the theme is like very done to death and jaded, or like it's not very imaginative. So the case in point being this Kaatera, which starred Darshan, again a big star, and now Landlord. So can you go into how there has been more misses overall? Like sometimes with a big star it has worked, but sometimes it has not. So it's not like the story alone, I mean the name alone can, even if it affords it reach, the reception, the acceptance of that is not always assured.
Yeah. See, like you mentioned, Kaatera stars Darshan, like we are talking about stars, right? But it doesn't forget to talk about farmers' concerns or caste discrimination. So what happens with Kaatera is, when you say hits and misses, why this was a hit is because of how the dialogues didn't sound too larger than life, and but yet they were whistle worthy. So it's a very tricky zone to make it look very real, yet garner whistles. So Maski, who wrote the dialogue, should get the credits. At the same time, Jadesh, the director of Landlord, was a co-writer for Kantara with Tarun Sudhi, the director. Kaatera, sorry. So what happens there is they worked on a script that balanced this, that is message and entertainment. And of course, the entertainment part was also done well. Like if you go to see a star, you want him to do certain things that is associated with him. That is a concern which we are seeing on social media, and what they're calling it very loosely is oppression depression films.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
So that is a kind of a drawback, because then makers think that the audience outside is not open for discussion. That is
and
one
are
thing.
They?
That it looks like that. It looks like that partly, but again, in their defense, what they're going to say is, if you give me a good film, even if it has a strong ideology that doesn't match theirs, they're going to watch it. Only if they're convinced that the craft is good. So Kaatera was a great example, and to Landlord's credit, it tried to be another Kaatera, like in the
No,
sense, in a good
it
way.
did. For the most part, it
Yes,
had
in a
like
good
really
way.
good
I'm not-
action
yeah,
sequences
true,
and
true.
storytelling for the most part.
Yeah, I'm not comparing it negatively. I found it how do you say, impressive that they tried to pull off another engaging commercial social drama.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, the action sequences were done really well, and of course, the fact that they were ambitious enough to pack in a lot of social concerns
Yeah.
were really nice in Landlord.
Just an observation, this is that time and again we see that when filmmakers want to bring such anti-caste struggles or the history of it to the fore, they go back to the time when there were feudal lords, or they take these kind of land rights feudal lord stories to be able to tell a larger story of caste struggles, and I think that again is very jaded. Like we've seen so many iterations of that, and that's where I mean there's no imagination. Like, why can't we see more stories that show how caste plays out today, in today's times, in today's workplaces, schools, colleges, friendships, and the relationships. But coming to that, one film that I really like, which we also brought up earlier, is Hebuli Cut. Which is set in like today's time and age. You did an interview with its director Bhimrao, where you mentioned that he promoted Hebuli Cut as a tender story of a boy's dream to get a fancy hairstyle. And then later in the same interview, Bhimrao says that the moment you mention Ambedkarism, a section of people will distance themselves from your movie. Hence, I stress the fact that my movie was a commercially engaging social drama. This is what he says, quote unquote. Now, do you think external factors like this, the reception from the audience or industry people and others such as censorship, financing, have shaped how anti-caste narratives are told on screen? Like, just to cater to these different factors, they either, compromise on the way they tell the story, or they want to find other means to say it.
You cannot stop people from making the movies that they want to. So that is where Bhimrao's concern is from. He is worried that if I mention what my movie is about, there will already be a section of people who will step back from it. That is a concern which we are seeing on social media, and what they're calling it very loosely is oppression depression films.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
So that is a kind of a drawback, because then makers think that the audience outside is not open for discussion. That is one thing. That it looks like that. It looks like that partly. But again, in their defense, what they're going to say is, if you give me a good film, even if it has a strong ideology that doesn't match theirs, they're going to watch it. Only if they're convinced that the craft is good. Bhimrao's concern reminds me of what Paranjit said once. Like when he came to the industry, he was told by a lot of people not to talk about his community or his background a lot, because he felt that he'll miss out on opportunities if he openly mention it. And somewhere Bhimrao's concern is the same. Like, if he is going to mention what the core point of his movie is, there could not be much of an interest. But to his credit, he's made a very beautiful film. Like, that movie shows the stamp of the filmmaker. Like, there's a lot of symbolism. There's a lot of subtle indications as to what is happening in the society. And he's very clear to narrate a very tender story. The flip side is, these films still come under the parallel cinema segment. Like, you and I are speaking about Hebuli Cut. I'm sure 100 people will know, but not thousands of people. For which to happen, we need to keep talking about it. But I would say it is happening in parallel cinema. Your concern about why can't we say more stories? Like you're right about the fact that the landlord and the oppressed lot is becoming a bit jaded, the entire concept itself. I was very impressed with Prithvi Koranu's Hadinelintu. I'm sure you've seen it.
Yes,
There's a scandal, and how two people involved in it get treated are so different. So the boy from the affluent family has so many options to kind of come out of the problem. Whereas the girl from the oppressed community, she has to struggle a lot to save her very promising volleyball career and then she's quite good in her
Studies, yes.
Yeah, so that shows the power structure, right, and the inequality in society. So that was a very nicely done film. Even if you categorize it in the parallel cinema section, it is very entertaining, very engaging. It can even be called as a commercial film. The only thing is, it is done in a very indie style as far as the energy of the movie is concerned. So that is, and even Natesh Hegde's Pedro, though not in the urban setup, it doesn't.
It is set in today's time.
Exactly, and it talks about how somebody who's considered an outcast, his very minor unintentional mistake becomes a huge problem, and
what is the price he pays for it?
Exactly, they're targeting him for a minor mistake. So, and this was told completely from like a director's signature was quite evident. If you see Pedro, there are a lot of long shots, pauses, so you feel that you're watching a young autieur's work. Apart from the fact that the concept is about social drama and all that, that is what is making these people stand out. They are bringing in their originality as far as filmmaking is concerned, and then picking subjects that are quite important in the society. So I think your concerns are largely addressed in the parallel cinema section, which Kannada is doing really well today with youngsters, whereas in the commercial cinema, like you said, it's a hit and a miss scenario, and you're not seeing films regularly as far as commercial cinema is concerned.
True. I mean, for me, the problem also becomes two-pronged in the sense that there are not enough directors from the community itself who are unable to come up or are able to put their stories forward and be put it out commercially. Like as long as it remains in the parallel cinema, at its very best, like the best content and form at its, even if it's parallel cinema, it still ends up becoming niche with a niche audience in a niche, like a festival setting or like special screenings. So I think the concern is also to, bring forward directors who are able to tell these stories and have the craft to say it more engagingly, and then bring it to a larger audience. And I think there are multiple factors that will have to, sort of come together to make it happen.
Yeah, just to interrupt you, the best example is somebody like Sidlingaya. Like you said, you need to have filmmakers who come from a certain background to talk about the problems involved in that community or a background, right? Somebody like Sidlingaya, he had a passion for farming, and most of his films involved farmers or were rural backgrounds, were set in rural backdrops. Bhutena Maga Ayyu was such a powerful film, but also a proper commercial movie. So that is a great example, like packing in commercial elements, but also telling a very important story. We even saw that, I mean, for sure you would have seen Janamada Jodi, and the commercial element came from the fact that it was a great musical. The songs are a hit even today, but it spoke about the problem of a couple from different castes. So that way, like you said, we are missing in on filmmakers who come from a certain background and who can tell stories of what they've seen or heard in a commercial way. In a commercial way.
Today is the age of OTT and digital streaming and how rights are bought and sold, way before a film sometimes even is realized fully. And to make cinema commercially viable is something we've not been able to crack, unlike other industries. So do you think movies that handle subjects about anti-caste movement and critique need critical frameworks, like newer critical frameworks and a rethink of the cinematic language so they can engage and hold a broader audience without ending up being niche, and also have cultural impact? Continue to have cultural impact for long years.
Absolutely. So what is happening now is, if you talk only about the mainstream setup, the bar is set by these filmmakers we spoke about, right, in Tamil, Mari Selvaraj, Paranjit, and we have to also mention the Nagraj Manjule from Marathi, who's also kind of made very strong films from these themes. But what is happening is, here we are not getting people, who can match the cinematic language that you spoke about. And another problem what we witness in Kannada is that if something works, there is an urge to imitate that
Yeah.
success. Like say if Kantara works, you've already seen so many jumping the Kantara bandwagon.
Yeah.
If Kaatera works, you can't make another Kaatera. So that is a problem here. We should tell individual stories. Like if you see Mari Selvaraj's filmography, one is not similar to another one.
Right.
Same thing with Ranjit. He makes a film with Rajnikant, and then he makes a film on love involving no stars.
Yeah.
I wish to see, like you mentioned, I wish to see the what the indie filmmakers are doing, the director's stamp, or how the filmmaking grammar, that they are so individualistic, the original. I wish to see the same thing in the mainstream setup.
Right.
And that will be the only way to go forward as far as keeping it interesting and also making a statement as far as commercial films are concerned.
True. Right. I agree on that. Market pressures and fear of backlash make anti-caste stories very uncomfortable and risky also to tell for sometimes predominantly Savarna audience, at times. So to tell this kind of stories and also walk the fine line between powerful messaging and creative finesse is something we need to come around to.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. Like you mentioned, market pressure is a very good point. That is why these films shouldn't be made on exorbitant budgets. You need to be very realistic on how much you're spending, because you know that the path to recovery takes a lot of time. And it takes a lot of effort to pull people to theaters. So you cannot have, like, for instance, a filmmaker was telling me, like, suppose a film like Titi, it is so, the flavor is so real. Imagine the same kind of approach to a film on caste discrimination, but with a star.
Right.
So how? So that is where the budget comes into play. But you're also, the star shouldn't be so. He shouldn't go for a huge budget, because then the recovery becomes a problem. So the budget should be limited and restricted if you're looking for the return of investment, and only if the films are declared hits you can see producers coming forward and investing in such things. Otherwise you will say that this kind of a genre doesn't work in box
but
office.
stars like that are few and far between, and sometimes their pay itself is much of the budget. So I think that's a larger conversation to have about the industry. So any last thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, what is happening now with Landlord is that people are quite surprised and they don't know what to make out of it. So, as in, will we see similar kind of movies? The only thing is, will there be more filmmakers coming to try this kind of movies? So that is where we stand now. And it also, depends on how Landlord does eventually. We're talking in the first week of the release. So in case there's a, change in fortunes and it has a longer run, that, and for that matter, the actor Vijay is quite open that he's going to take the similar path. Like he's going to make films that look like these, and it is going to be discussing similar themes. But again, will the audience repeatedly back him is a
or any others who come after them
for
similar
but
stories.
We have to again go back to the fact that it should look fresh.
Correct.
Otherwise, the moment it looks similar, people are going to back out.
So let's hope that more filmmakers continue to tell such stories, and in a varied manner, in different settings, and with different kinds of experimentation with form as well as cast, and do so in a sustained manner. So we get to see more anti-caste films and stronger messaging in the future. To our audience, is there any anti-caste cinema from Kannada that you've really liked and would like to tell us? Do let us know in the comments below. Thank you for joining us. I'll see you in the next episode of Decode Karnataka. Until then, follow The Hindu for more such stories and videos.